How's it going? Welcome back to another great video with the majestic host for Savior and Jesus Christ, okay? We are finally cooking, okay? We are finally cooking with VR games. Now, it feels like for the longest time since VR kind of first emerged, I'm not talking about when it was like a gimmicky little 80s device or those, commercials.
It needs your eyes. Virtual Boy, see it now in 3D.
When VR gaming started to pop off with the Oculus release, we just got a handful of experiences, and it's been like that all the way up till this point. We've had a few big AA games, AAA games in VR, but finally it feels like VR gaming is stepping into the full AA, AAA space. And let's face it, a lot of the gaming industry, modern day gaming industry that's kind of in their own little bubble, similar to Hollywood, has become corrupt. It's all about chasing modern day trends, pushing ideologies, chasing ESG scores, paying off and, marketing games falsely, early access, all of this stuff, how to make the most money from games instead of making fun games. Instead of it being about creativity and an art form, a lot of them have forgot about that. Of course, some of them are still amazing. I'm not saying all of these games are bad, but I'm talking about the big studios that are now going bust, like Ubisoft. But VR gaming, okay, it's now in that renaissance period. It's now finally, where creativity and experimentations with different mechanics can actually take place. VR gaming still has so much untapped potential with mechanics in video games, physically interacting with stuff, physics-based gameplay, all of this stuff. And it's great to see that finally good games are coming out, Metro, Behemoth, Batman. Today, I want to talk about Behemoth and give you my Behemoth VR review. The reason why this appeals to me so much, if you don't know, I'm a massive Dark Souls fan, a huge Dark Souls nerd, honestly. And this takes my favorite elements from VR gaming, physical-based gameplay, physics in games, especially in VR gaming, is just amazing to me. It's taking the elements from something like Blade and Sorcery, and Saints and Sinners for Walking Dead, and Dark Souls, and blending them together. Just the cherry on top, a little bit of Shadow of Colossus DNA in there. So this is like, my dream game in VR, honestly. And I'm so happy because it's made by one of the best developers in VR gaming, if you ask me, and that is the people behind The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners. I honestly feel they made the best Walking Dead game, period, apart from the Telltale series, originally anyway. And they are masters of physical combat, physics-based gameplay, and just this rich atmosphere, okay? So they have now approached this kind of fantasy style, and it's really interesting to me as a massive Dark Souls fan. So you have this bonfire mechanic. As you can see, you're approaching this kind of stone, and you have to place both of your hands on that stone, and then it will commence a bonfire checkpoint. So it has that element, it has light crafting, that you can find stuff in the wilderness, but it's not necessarily needed. It has all of the staples of a proper AAA game. It has an arena-based mode at launch, and then basically a full campaign with a rough story, I would say. It's more about the gameplay more than the story, but there is a story here to a degree, and the campaign will last you around 12 hours, so it's quite a meaty campaign, especially for a VR game. But why this appeals to me so much is it's borrowing elements from all of the best VR games, okay? That's why I'm so excited. It's got the physical-based combat from Blade and Sorcery and Saints and Sinners, kind of combining them too. It has a parry mechanic exactly like Dark Souls, okay? Pretty much. So if you parry the enemy's attack when they're swinging and you match their swing, they get staggered. So there's not only a parry mechanic, but also a stagger mechanic where you can get in hits. It's very slow paced. It's, deliberately designed so you don't, break a VR game. Because a lot of them, you can break them, like in Skyrim VR, you can just swing your arms around like spaghetti. That's where VR gaming fails, okay? Because it doesn't match your physical body. But having physics in VR games, that's how you can implement by actually having weight to all of these objects. And the combat just looks so good, okay? And today I'm going to give you the Behemoth VR review the Behemoth VR game review based on the hands-on, okay? This is an early review, I haven't played all of it, but this is from the hands-on. I can tell you if it's worth it or not. Is Behemoth worth it? Well, let's find out. So what I love about this game so far is it's taking all of the best elements, like I said, from many different genres: Dark Souls, Shadow of the Colossus, even a kind of spin-off, even this kind of small little game most of you probably don't know about, called Windlands, okay? And basically it's where you swing around and you're basically Spider-Man, okay? They have a grapple hook in this game, and you don't just use it to trip up the, behemoths like you would in Star Wars when you're taking down an AT-ST, but you also use it to, pull weapons towards you, pull items towards you, to actually pull the environment and use environmental stuff to take down enemies. You can push them into spike traps, similar to Blade and Sorcery, or just pull them off a ledge and stuff like that. It's very satisfying, but also you can use it to swing around, okay? Like I said, like Spider-Man. So it's got all of these different elements that have, emerged over the years of VR to truly make this probably one of the best VR games ever made, to be honest. So that's why I'm so excited about it. And if you don't know this, I don't usually cover VR games unless if there's something truly amazing, but I do feel that we are now in that renaissance period, that PS2 creative period in VR gaming, when there is chance to take risks and make something revolutionary. I don't like VR as a platform, as a social platforming, but for immersive VR experiences like games, I do think they can be truly something special. And the scale in this is just crazy. Playing Shadow of the Colossus is always such a magical experience to me, and it's one of the GOATs for a reason. But here, actually physically climbing this giant beast, I think this is going not to be for everyone, because it really does require a lot of concentration. It's actually quite difficult, to manage everything, and if you are prone to being motion sickness, this is not for you. So I am worried about the longevity of this type of a game, but honestly, the mechanics that it's pushing, that's what makes me excited for the gaming industry and creativity in general. If you are enjoying this Behemoth review, make sure that you do subscribe, by the way. That would mean so much to me. You have no idea how much it would mean to me. I put everything that I am into this channel. I'm passionate about creativity, gaming. If you love gaming analysis, yearly reviews where I look at games deeper, and early reviews like this, and philosophical content where I blend everything together, make sure you do subscribe if that sounds interesting to you. You don't want to miss this community, because we're trying to push the industry forwards, keep OG YouTube alive, and call out, all of this BS that we see in modern day media and the world in general. So do subscribe. So you also have this rage mode ability. So when you are attacking the enemies, you can activate this to basically be kind of God of War beast mode. And that's pretty satisfying, because then you can pull off more experimental, physical attacks, just hand-to-hand combat. It's not as freeform as something like Boneworks, but it does still, give you a lot of experimentation, just like in Saints and Sinners. Now, these are going to be linear levels, and basically, you will be encountering these giant behemoths, and you will have to conquer each one. And each one is slightly different. Each one has a slightly different puzzle to them, just like in Shadow of the Colossus. Some you have to swing across, like we saw in the hands-on. Others, you will have to, target, specific areas of the body, or get them into that weakened state, similar to Shadow of the Colossus, to target, parts of their body that you wouldn't have access to otherwise. And all this time you have to be managing your stealth, similar like Zelda or Breath of the Wild, similar to that mechanic. You have to actually think about stealth mechanics. There are so many mechanics in this game, and it's honestly quite shocking, because for a VR game, you never usually get to see anything like this. The only thing that is a little bit disappointing is I haven't seen any use of magic in this game so far, but like I said, this is an early review, so maybe that will come later. Skydance are just amazing at creating their worlds, and they've always got a unique art style. Like I said, they don't get much credit because it's a VR gaming development team, but I honestly do feel that Saints and Sinners nail that telltale aesthetic with their own flair to it. This as well has its own unique graphical style, but it still looks realistic, and I really do love that kind of dreamscape, kind of dark fantasy mixed with high fantasy. One thing that is pretty cool about this game is the levels are quite expansive, okay? So there are, linear levels, but you do have side exploration paths to go down. And this is where you can find, better weapons. And like I said, you do have this kind of camp bonfire mechanic system where you can, do trading, and there's, light exploration paths going forwards. There's a clear way to go forwards, but there are light exploration elements, and you can even find, puzzles out there, just getting towards this big behemoth boss. Similar to Shadow of the Colossus, but a more linear version of that game where you will be, going through dungeons and stuff like that. And I'm sure there are going to be more unique enemy types later down the road. I also love that, you can take down these enemies in different ways. There's many different tactics. When you do have them staggered, then you can go in for the attack, or you can grapple them and then do the Saints and Sinners standard, knife to the head and all that kind of stuff. So there really is like a lot of options when it comes to combat. You have a bow and arrow as well, and the grapple hook, like I said. The puzzles are quite interesting as well, requiring, use of the physics-based gameplay, which I really like. And then the behemoths themselves are massive giant puzzles in themselves, where you really do have to think about that, manage your stamina, and, it is quite brutal, but luckily there are checkpoints as you go up. The only few nitpicks I would say with this Behemoth review, this Behemoth VR review, I would say, is the fact that the lack of, momentum to your body. Everything has physics in this game, but sometimes controlling your character doesn't feel as fluid as something like in Blade and Sorcery, where your body can feel a little bit floaty at times and a little bit disconnected, I would say. The same with the enemies. Sometimes, I like that it's choreographed, similar to Dark Souls, where you really have to, watch and manage their attacks and then just react to it. That's how you can get the parries in. Don't just go in there like a dum-dum, waving your arms around like spaghetti. You have to think about it tactically, but at times the enemies, sometimes, their attacks can kind of just bug out, basically, and they don't actually react to your hit. But all in all, I think Behemoth is like the best AA, experience for VR at the moment. This is exactly what we need to see more of in the industry, and I hope that we can continue to push this type of game forward, because I do think VR truly does have the potential for creative, unique experiences in gaming, in even, more personal storytelling and all this stuff. But the problem is we just don't get to see that at the moment because the industry just hasn't caught up with it. I do not support VR as a platform, because I do think it is a way for corporations to have control over us and push us towards transhumanism, which is not good, because we do need to be connected and break down the tribalism barriers that we have in our own actual world that we live in. And already people are too much, interacting and living a digital life. But for, immersive gaming experiences and, art like games or any form of creative media, I do think VR truly has an amazing potential, and I hope this is only the beginning of what is to come for big AAA game releases in VR. So I do hope you enjoyed this Behemoth VR game review, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a great day. Peace out.